how to go about interpreting a resolution. So I'm going to approach it from the back end and work forwards for the next 12 minutes. And then the advanced people will stay in here. We'll do some other stuff. This will be good for you too. The back end of Parli is being opposition. Reason being, government, the first speech is just think of it as a speech. All of you in this room are not going to be smarter by being debaters. There's nothing wrong with you. You're perfectly intelligent. We're teaching you new formats and words and things, but they're just to help you express what's already there. If you were to get a new topic like sin taxes are just, however you would most naturally approach that to make a 8-minute or 7-minute speech on the subject, you probably would not be too far off. We're going to work on making that be even more targeted with case structures and all these things. Let's flip the other side. If we were opposition, how do we predict what the other team is going to do, and how do we walk into the room having no clue what their case is going to be and be ready to have something worth saying? That's what we'll start with. Sound good? Okay. Going up, let me get a resolution up here. Whew, how about this? The right to be forgotten from internet searches ought to be a civil right. Eh? What?
The European Union just held that.
Yeah. Right to be forgotten.
The right to be forgotten. So that when you search someone's identity, I have the right to have that taken off.
Okay, but just to full circle this is a perfect example of what we were just talking about. A, what kind of resolution is this? It's kind of between fact and policy. I can see arguments for both. I would call this a fact resolution on its face. You're saying, how ought this to be determined? You don't have to come up with a specific policy of what that means. Like, you don't have to figure out whether Facebook has to do this certain thing or Google has to do that certain thing. You just have to say, we've got to get to where we figure out those policies to enact what is a right. So you're going to make an observation, this is a right, and worry about the implementation of that right later. That is a way to interpret this. Note, a government team could go either direction, and you should be ready for them to go either direction. The other thing they might do, a government team could say, this kind of looks like a fact, but it's justifiably a policy resolution. I'm going to go and just defend a very specific policy with just one company, just Google. Google's going to do X. And then they're going to walk into the room and do that, and then you're going to have to broaden the scope of the resolution to say, no, it's a bigger question than just Google's policy. So that's kind of some of the things that could go on. But to the Supreme Court question, this is an opinion. We are arguing that the judge hold a certain opinion because we hold a certain opinion. Fact resolutions tend to lend themselves towards that debate. Are we going to say that the president has to believe the right to be forgotten from the internet is a civil right? No. That's not the debate. So you see, we're now debating about what should our perspective be. That's a fact debate. Kind of cool. Okay. We're up. Here's what I would typically do. First of all, I would have 4 or 5 sheets of paper of my own, torn out, loose. I probably have that. I always carry around blank paper for this exact purpose. Very good. I just use blank paper. That's how I like it. Then on that paper, on the top corner, I'm going to write the titles of different things. So the first is always going to be what I will call interp. That means the interpretation. This is up. Gov is similar, but this is up. So I'm going to write on a piece of paper just the word interp, everything that has to do with What kind of resolution is this? What are the specific words? What do they mean? What are the burdens of the resolution? I'm going to keep on this piece of paper. Other pieces of paper may end up saying things like disadvantage 1. What would disadvantage 1 be?
You're assuming rights come from the government? Less convenience.
Yeah, this will be more of a critique than a disadvantage, but our argument will be that it perverts the meaning of rights. Who was the second person that talked? Because I stole yours. Was that you? Who said that?
I was the one that said you're assuming rights come from the
Yeah, that's... So now I have disadvantage 1 or critique 1 or whatever this argument is. Everything that I have about that argument for the entire course of the debate round will be contained on this sheet of paper. That helps, because when I go walk up to the lectern, I know I am as organized as everything both sides have said about interpretations here, disadvantage 1's here, the other team's case are on these next 3 pages with good titling. I can mix and match these and present them in any order, and I won't get lost. It's good for organization. Second thing I'll do. I don't do this anymore because I know the space on how much space I'll take up on a paper, but you should do this. I will draw a line, because all of my preparation is going to be on this side of the line. If I take up all my paper with my preparation materials during Parli prep, how will I know what they said against me? Which goes here. And then what I'm going to say against them, which goes here, for 5 speeches. 5 speeches. That'd be very hard to do. Classic debater mistake. And I mean classic. This is very hard to do well at Parli without doing this. Do some people do that? Yes. There are other ways to achieve this. This is classic Parli flowing. Keep your arguments here. So now let's go to the whiteboard, and we'll pretend that the whiteboard is our paper. On the interp paper, Tucker, can I stand here? Okay. We're going to just list out different pieces of argumentation that we'll use. When we're up, we plan to deploy around 40% of what we prepare. You're going to prepare for several possibilities. You don't use them all blindly, because the affirmative, the government team, is going to present something that doesn't fit all possibilities you prepared for. It would be very silly to go read them all. So we're even going to have contradictory arguments on here, because we don't know which way the other team is going to go. These are all our good interpretation arguments. First of all, we're going to say it's fact. And we say that because it's about belief, not policy, not specifics.
And even the obvious stuff on midterm you want to write down, because never underestimate what
Yeah.
people disagree with you.
Yeah. And in fact, you know what? I'm going to send all the coaches out of the room for just like 4 minutes. While we do this, do it yourselves, and then come back in and tell us what you did. Do we have 4 minutes? We don't have 4 minutes. Can we do it? Can we swing it? Yeah, we can swing it. Okay. Yeah, just go out. All the coaches go out of the room for just 4 minutes. For op. Yeah. Just whatever you want to prep. Okay. Just kind of come back in, and then you can report what you spent your 4 minutes doing, so they can all see what different minds came up with. He's organized.
Saving it to the class.
Yes. Okay. So we'll move on. We're going to define different things. Second of all, let's see. We'll define right to be forgotten. Whenever you debate, shorthand is your friend, because it keeps you from writing all the time. The right to be forgotten means. Has anybody looked this up already on the smartphones you're not allowed to have? Okay, I'm just wondering. What does it mean?
It means that you can submit it in the EU. They actually legalized it. Now, if you want to be forgotten, you have the right to submit a form to Google, and then none of your information shows up on Google search results.
Good. So individuals' ability to submit for removal of what, your name?
Any information you choose.
Yeah.
Off of a Google search
and
engine.
it
It's not
applies to
deleted
your
from,
entire
the web address isn't deleted, but it won't show up on any search engine. Or at least Google's or whoever you submit.
Yeah, but you couldn't go to some competitor's website and say, don't show that information.
Well,
No,
I think it could be any search.
It can only be your.
Yeah. But this is the cool part of the debate. I'm going to go ahead and start on page 2 a solvency argument, which is going to be no way to be fair. And while I'm thinking about it, and this is truly how I prep, if you think of other arguments, this is where you can start to divide and conquer as a team. I also think, whoa, what is my main objection to this? The internet is about information. We're in an information age. That's probably good. I should have arguments as to why that's good and how this policy is antithetical, or this belief is antithetical to the information age and what that does for people. So I'm going to have a critique at some point. So I've got another piece of paper already, 4 pieces of paper, and it's going to be information age. You could do that. Information age self-destruct. So it's dark ages. Okay. Then I go back to here to my interpretation. This is why you have multiple pieces of paper. Third. Individual ability to submit for removal from search. Yeah, from search. Okay. 3. Civil right. How do we define civil right? A, not a human right. In other words, the affirmative team cannot argue that as a part of being a human, you get this. We're arguing that it is a good that is granted or something. How will we define civil right positively? We've defined what it's not. It's positive right. Who enforced by government. That's kind of another funky thing that's happening. Typically, rights aren't associated with what you can and can't do around companies and what companies have to do or not do for you. Like, we wouldn't even, would we call the minimum wage a civil right to a minimum wage? I don't know that we would call it that. Yeah. We're going to have a second critique, which is that we're taking rights to the corporation. When rights are supposed to be government to individual. Yes, we are probably going to be anti-positive rights, and we can go ahead and say that. That's probably, in fact, I would be willing to bet right now that's where we win the debate. Positive rights are bad.
Is it a positive right at all?
No, it should be a positive rights.
Well, you can't define whether it is or is not a positive right because the argument is ought to be, because it's not a human right. A human right means it is a right, no matter what. A positive right means we're going to give them the right. And so our argument is there's no such thing. We shouldn't have positive rights because it's there's an unending supply of opinion as to what those ought to be. Instead, negative rights are the only way to go. You're protected from the government in XYZ, ABC areas because you're a human or because you're a citizen, as the nature of things, not because we decide to grant you things.
So positive rights are also given to you, negative rights are things that cannot be taken away.
Correct.
But what this is a ruling that says something that can't be taken away from you is your rights being forgotten. It doesn't seem quite positive you're given the right to not be found.
Here's the distinction. The distinction is prior to that. It's a human right is something like the government can't take your life. So the government can't do something to you. Yeah, negative right. Thank you. This is not along those lines. So it's not the government forcing something at or on you and the right restricts them from doing so. It is instead something that must be given to you. That's the difference between a positive and a negative right. So if I owe you clean water in your township, that's a positive right. If I poison you and you die, that's violation of a negative right. Fluoridation of the water supply. Ooh, yes.
Argue that this isn't even speaking specifically about people. This would have to apply to corporations, businesses, and nonprofit organizations and the like, because it doesn't specify a human being, and because those organizations have been considered to have civil rights as well.
That's great. So I would throw that under this, is that res isn't specific to people. And in fact, based on that one Supreme Court ruling that we all debated about last year, corporations are people too. Okay. We'll do one more. Fourth part of our interpretation will be, we'll do some burdens. Here are some burdens that we're going to put on the other team. A, they have the burden to prove it's possible, which will directly link to our solvency argument. They have the burden to prove, burden of proof, internet search is definable. What are some other burdens they have to prove to fulfill their side of the res?
They have to find a way to, I guess like your solvency one, they have to find a way to implement this. They have to find a way to force all internet providers to somehow be able to simultaneously forget someone.
Yeah, I'm going to put that right here.
But this is a fact resolution.
They also need to prove that
That's going to be the debate, right? Yeah. So that's going to be their pushback on us is it's just a fact res. And so we're basically at this point saying it's a policy res. So now this and that contradict each other. That's okay. Whichever way they go, we'll go the other way. How about this? Good and right don't equal each other. They have the burden to prove that good things must become rights. Or, no, even harder. Good things versus rights, they have to have a defensible bright line. A burger is good. Ought it therefore be a civil right? Clearly no. What's the bright line? At what point do good things suddenly become civil rights? If the affirmative team doesn't have a doctrine for this, guess what? This disadvantage gets worse. Because if, well, everything good is a civil right, then the government's going to decide all kinds of things that it thinks are good are suddenly civil rights. And it's going to be very uncomfortable in the room because of the weird things that you'll talk about. This is how interpretation relates to your contentions. And what's fun is either they'll violate it here, or you'll prove it bad there. It's kind of cool. We'll talk about that more later. There. That's going to be the rest of the 10 minutes that we theoretically have in prep will be spent building out these contentions. We'll probably divide up as teams and say, one partner gets these two, one gets the other two. And we'll try to come up with examples and substructure and links for all this. Then in the actual debate round, depending on what the other team does, we will probably use 40% of this and probably one or two of these, because guess what else we're doing? We're listening and writing down responses to what they say. Who knows? I've won plenty of Parli debates on up using 0% of what I prepared. because we debated their case at their level. You can do that. In fact, you should debate their case at their level. It does not seem right for other team to just ignore the entire first speech and run their own stuff. Okay, let's call the coaches back in and see what they come up with.